It's day 6 of my 31 days of Halloween drawing tutorials right here on YouTube. Every day in October, a new tutorial. Today, I'm gonna show you how you can draw this cute black cat from start to finish, all in real time, no time lapse. So if you wanna follow along and draw with me, keep watching. All right guys, let's go ahead and draw this black cat. So for today's tutorial, I'm using a 3000 by 3000 300 DPI canvas. For my brush, I'm gonna start out using my standard Inker Streamline. That's part of my cartooning brush set. And for the color palette, I've already got this made up so you guys can follow along with the exact colors that I'm using here in the tutorial. I've got this linked on my website, bjdell.com, under the YouTube reference section, which I will link to in the description below. Basically, just save this as a JPEG. You can go ahead and go up to add and insert a photo, bring it in as a separate layer, and then just color select the different boxes for the color palette. I know 5X has an import color palette from Photo. It doesn't work the same though with this. So people that say that in the comments and say, why aren't you doing that? It's because it loads in 30 different colors. We're not using 30 different colors. That's why I go this route. So let's go ahead and get started. To begin with, I'm using the black color here first up at the top. And like I said, that streamline brush. And we're just gonna go ahead and make a circle. So holding down with one finger and then putting our other finger down, we'll lock it into a perfect circle. Then we're gonna drag and drop the black color in there. But I don't want the head to be a perfect circle. I want it to have a little bit more of a funky shape. So to do that, we're gonna go up to our arrow and we're gonna go to warp. And we're just gonna pull down the bottom here so it kind of is bigger and wider and flatter here at the bottom. And it's gonna come up more to a curve here at the top. I think that looks pretty good. So we'll go ahead and lock that in. I'm gonna shrink this down and move it just a little bit. I'm gonna kind of have this guy off-centered too. So there we go. So there's our head. Let's go ahead and give him some ears next. So if we go up to our layers, make a new layer, and then we drag and drop this down. That's gonna be our first ear. So we can just go ahead and just kind of make a curved ear here. Connecting those is going to allow us then to drag and drop the color in. So we've got the left ear started, but I want that inside part of the ear as well. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and slide the layer to the left, and we're going to duplicate it. So now we've got 2 of those left ears. Next, we're going to go up to our colors here, and we're going to select this pink color, and then we're going to drag and drop it there into the ear. So you can see that takes up the entire ear, but we're gonna shrink it down. So to do that, let's go up to our arrow, making sure that we've got freeform selected so we have a little bit more control over it. And then I'm just gonna drag this inside. So we've got that pink color on the inside of the ear. So we've got the left ear. Let's go ahead and make the right one. So to do this, we've already got this layer in blue. So let's go ahead and slide this layer underneath it to the right. So they're both in blue, and then we're gonna group them. So now this allows us to keep these on separate layers, but duplicate the group. So to do that, let's go ahead and slide new group to the left and duplicate. Going back up to our arrow then, we're gonna flip this horizontally, and then making sure snapping's on, we're gonna drag this over. Snapping, you see it's got those blue lines, so that guarantees that we've got this lined up from left to right. So there we go. So now we've got our left ear and our right ear. Next, let's go ahead and give this guy some eyes. So to do that, open up our layers menu again. Let's go up to layer 1 and hit the plus button for a new layer. Then let's go to our color palette here and let's select the yellow. And we're gonna draw another circle, holding down with our one finger and then our other finger to lock it in, and then dragging and dropping the color here. Then I'm gonna move this just a little bit here. So going up to the arrow, I'm gonna make sure freeform or uniform selected. When you're doing anything like a circle, just to make sure it doesn't change the overall shape, if you go to uniform, that keeps everything proportioned. So we've got the left eye, but we need a pupil in there. So let's do that next. Kind of like we did with the ears here. We're going to slide this one to the left and we're going to duplicate it. And then we're going to go up to our color palette, select that black, drag and drop that in. And of course, you can't see the yellow anymore because the black's sitting on top. So we need to grab that arrow again, uniform selected. We're going to shrink this down and then bring it over here. I don't want to go clear over to the side just because it's going to totally wipe out that yellow section there and you're not going to see it. So just bring it into about there, I think looks pretty good. And then we need to do the highlights in here. So selecting white then, let's go ahead and just do a circle here. And we'll drag and drop the color in there. And then let's do a smaller circle underneath here. And you'll see here, I've got a little bit of a line. So that means my color drop threshold isn't turned up high enough. So if you drag and drop this in, you'll see this blue line up here. If you slide your pencil to the right, that blue line gets bigger, the percentage goes up, and that fills in that line. So if you are dragging and dropping colors in on your designs and you're seeing that gap in between your lines and the color, that's why color drop threshold isn't turned up high enough. So you can fix it by just adjusting it like I just showed you. All right, so there we go. We've got the left eye. Now we're gonna do the same thing that we did for the ears here. We're just gonna go ahead and slide this one to the right. So we've got them both in blue, and we're gonna go ahead and group these. Then we're gonna go to our group, slide that to the left, and we're gonna duplicate. And then we're gonna go ahead and flip this one horizontally and bring it over. About there. So with this, the only thing that I don't like on this, of course, our highlights are coming in this way, but our highlights are on the wrong side here. So to fix that, what we can do is we can go ahead and delete that pupil there. And then for this one, we can go ahead, slide this one to the right, and we can duplicate this one, and then bring this one up into this group, and then we can slide it over. So you'll see now everything matches up as far as the highlights go. So using that technique of the grouping and sliding to the left and right, if you've already got highlights or anything like that that has to follow suit, might not be the best solution. So sometimes just duplicating individual layers might work better. So kind of use that sparingly as you need to. So next up, let's go ahead and do a nose. So I'm gonna go ahead and once again, make a new layer here at the top. I'm gonna go back to my color palette and pick the pink here. And then let's just draw a little oval down here. I'm gonna go up to my arrow now and freeform and drag this kind of a little bit more here to the center. And then I'm gonna go ahead and warp, bring this down, maybe bring this in, just kind of give it more of that cat look. Once again with this, if you feel comfortable drawing this, you can as well. Sometimes I know people have a little bit harder of a time drawing it by hand, and this way is going to give a little bit smoother of lines, cleaner look. So it's totally up to you how you want to go about it. Then locking it in, you can check how it looks by zooming back out. I think that looks pretty good. I might shrink it down just a little bit here so it's not as close to the eyes. All right, there we go. I think that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and do a mouth now. For this, I'm going to go ahead and go up to my layers here. Let's go ahead and make a new layer. Let's drag this underneath the nose. Then I'm going to zoom in so you can see this a little bit better. And hopefully you haven't run out of layers yet. I did this on a 3000 by 3000 pixels, so people without pros might be able to follow along without having layer problems and running out. So let's go to this gray here. I think that's what we're going to go ahead and use for the mouth. And then I'm just going to bring down a line in the center. And then just a line to the left, and a line to the right. And with this one, I've got my brush that I'm on right now. set up to do some tapers and everything else. If you're looking for a perfect line from start to finish as far as width, the one thing I recommend is calligraphy. Monoline is really good for this. It doesn't matter how hard you press or if you taper it off, it's all going to stay the exact same size. So as soon as you've got your base thickness down on the slider, it's just going to stay that thickness no matter how hard you press, or if you let up at the end, it's all going to give that perfect, almost like a Illustrator type look line. So there we go. I think I did a thing there. So there we go. We've got the mouth in. That looks pretty good. How about we do maybe some whiskers coming off of there? So we can do that as well with the gray there. So we can even do it with the same layer if we want to. So if we go ahead and go to, I'm going to go back to my cartooning and my standard inker, and we can just kind of pull off some whiskers here off to the side. And this one might be better to do on a separate layer, honestly, just because we kind of want these to line up from left to right. So by doing them on a separate layer, it's going to allow us to duplicate and then slide them out then to that other side. So if we go ahead and slide this to the left, duplicate, arrow, flip horizontally, and then slide them. That way they're lined up and they look a little bit better. So there we go. Now we can go ahead and pinch those just to save some layers on there. All right, so next up, let's go ahead and do the body. So for this, I'm going to go down to the very bottom here. I'm going to make a new layer and drag it underneath. Then I'm going to go back up to my black. And this one, I'm going to use the standard inker streamline. I think I want him to have like a really thin neck, kind of off to the side here. Something like that. I think that looks pretty good. We'll bring in some paws here. And we'll just drag and drop these in here once we've got everything connected. All right, so there we go. That's our base body. And now let's go ahead and make a new layer for the tail. So we're going to drag this down behind. And let's go ahead and just do an oval here. So once again, I can show you how the warp works. So yeah, that doesn't really look like a cattail, so we're going to go up to the arrow and go to warp. And we're just going to start to pull this in and around. And just like that, we've got a pretty convincing cattail. I think that looks pretty cute. So that's going to be the base kind of color flats, the base shape for our cat. So now we can start working on the shadows and highlights. So let's go ahead and do that next. I think I'm going to start with the inside of the ears first. So we're on this right hand one here. So for this, I'm going to switch over to my texture brushes, and I'm going to go ahead and use, let's see, I'm going to go ahead and use sand for this one. And starting inside here, we're going to go ahead and, to save some layers, we're going to alpha lock this. In my previous tutorials, I've talked about clipping masks and how those work so they're not as destructive. You can go in and change stuff like the opacity if you need to, but I think with this, we're already at so many layers here. I think using the alpha lock here to keep everybody able to do this is going to be better. So I'm going to go ahead and move over to this color here, this kind of darker pink color. And I'm just going to start to pull around the inside of the ear here, adjusting my size so it's where I want it to be. Just kind of around that top there. Now I want to darken this up a little bit where it meets that black. So I'm going to go to that next color over here. And this I'm going to pull in around that part where it meets the black. So it's going to kind of fade from this color into that first color that we did. And then we're going to do the same thing here on the left hand side, alpha locking this one, going to that darker color here, the darker pink color, and then we'll go to the darker color next. We've got that. Back to our darker color now. Just pulling that around the top. So you can see how that starts to kind of build those up a little bit more three-dimensional. There we go. Bringing this one a little bit more too. All right, so we've got the ears. Next up, let's go ahead and obviously there's not gonna be a lot of shadows to the cat because it's pretty black. So we're gonna go ahead and do some highlights for that. So let's go to this gray first, and we're gonna go to our head, which is the one underneath the first yellow one here. Once again, we're gonna set this to alpha lock, and I'm just gonna start to kind of pull around a highlight here. And when you do shadows and highlights with this with textures, really it's just a back and forth trying to find that perfect size setting for the brush. So it's not too big, not too small, and it gives you pretty good control over it. And I'm gonna do down around the bottom here too. Technically, there wouldn't be a massive highlight down here unless there was a light source coming from the bottom, but I think this is good to kind of break up that neck right there so the head does look like a separate section. And that's why that we did the head and the body on two separate ones, because we can go in like this and it makes it work a lot easier by being able to alpha lock a different section like that. So there's that. Let's add some highlights then. Now that we've got this brush out and the color selected to the tops of the ears here. Whoops, I don't have these alpha locked yet. So we'll alpha lock these. Just gonna pull that in on just the edge there at the top. And we'll do the same thing on this one. Once again, each time we select a new one, we need to alpha lock it. Pull that around, so that looks pretty good there. And now let's go ahead and add some highlights down around the bottoms of the eyes. It'll make those pop a little bit more. So once again, the head layer that we're on here, I want to go ahead and start to bring in some around here. And I think for this one, I'm going to switch this. Still on the texture pack, I'm going to switch this to the soft fabric. It's a little bit more forgiving around the eyes when we're trying to do this really kind of fine line. It's going to work a little bit better. See, when you pull out, it just kind of makes those pop out a little bit more. And I like the look of it. So let's see, next up then, let's go ahead and do the tail next. So if we go to the very bottom layer here, set this one as alpha lock. And then going back up here, we're gonna switch back to sand. Just gonna hit the back here of the tail. I'm bringing that down, and then also the back of the cat too. So going to the body, I'm gonna alpha lock this one. Just kind of come down along this back. Do the same thing here for this part of the leg coming out. Then another one here on the top of this foot, just so it kind of lets you know that that foot breaks right there. So it's not one big glob. All right, there we go. So that looks good. Next up, let's go ahead and do the eyes. So for this, let's start out with some shadows. So let's go ahead and go to this left eye first. We're gonna alpha lock this one. Going back up to our color palette, this kind of rust color here, we're gonna use that, and then we're gonna switch back to that soft fabric again. And we're just gonna kind of build up a shadow here at the bottom of this one. Now we're gonna switch to white, kind of pull a highlight here across the top. We're also going to pull in another highlight here along the bottom to kind of make that shadow pop a little bit more. So that looks good. Now let's go ahead and do the same thing to this side. So alpha locking this one, going back up to that rust color. Still on our soft fabric here. Building up that shadow. Going back to the white there, kind of pulling in that highlight there. And then kind of here around the top and the front. There's that. And I think I want to do like a complete overall highlight. So to make this all line up, these two groups right here, the eyes, we're going to go ahead and pinch these together now. So now these are all one. And I'm going to do a white section just straight across both of them here towards the top. So this is going to cross the white that we already did to the highlights and the black of the pupils. So it's got more of a kind of shine there. Let me drop this down just a little bit here. I just want this to have like a nice curve to it too, so. All right, there we go. So let's go ahead and do, I think the last thing is going to be the nose here. So let's zoom in here a little bit on the nose. And let's go ahead and select that. Alpha lock this one. And I'm going to get this darker pink color here. We're still on that soft fabric because I want this to be a little bit softer around the nose. So we're going to bring this dark pink around the bottom. And then back again with this darker color to kind of build it up a little bit more shadow-wise. And then I'm just going to grab a white to go in on the top. Just give that a nice little shine there. All right, so there's our basic cat. Let's go ahead and do a background on this guy. So for this, let's go ahead and choose this lighter purple here. I'm gonna switch back to my regular streamline here. And I'm gonna draw, oops, am I on? I need to make a new layer. Forgot about that. So go ahead and make a new layer. Drop this all the way to the bottom. And we're just gonna make a circle here, lock it in, and drag and drop our color. It looks pretty good there. And then let's go ahead and go back to our texture brushes. And I'm gonna switch back to sand now. And I'm gonna go ahead and alpha lock this. Then I'm gonna go to the darker purple here. Really big on this, I'm going to pull the darker purple up from the bottom. It's going to kind of give it a gradient feel. And then this bluish green, we'll pull this in from the top. It's going to kind of fade from one to the next. Go back in with that darker. And then back in with that lighter one here in the middle. And then kind of brighten it up. I'm going to select white, kind of go in there with some white too. It's got a lot of texture to it, so I think that looks really good. Last but not least, I want to grab just a black color here, and we can do it on this layer. I need to sign it, so last thing here. And there we go. Day number 6, Black Cat. Hopefully you guys enjoyed today's tutorial. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that bell for notifications so you can get alerted when I post new videos. Like I said, there's gonna be 31 days of these tutorials, so be super, super happy if you guys joined along for every single day. If you guys post artwork based on these tutorials, definitely tag me. If you do it on Instagram or Twitter at BJDell, or you can also post it in the group over on Facebook. Keep creating a group for artists by artists. I'll link that in the description below. You can share your work, give feedback, get feedback. It's an awesome place to be. Also for me, I can be found online, bjdell.com, as well as the new podcast, Make Money With Your Art, found wherever you listen to podcasts at. And that's it for today. Hopefully you'll join me tomorrow. And until next time, keep creating.